Ladies and gentlemen, the service is going to start in about 5 minutes. So start making your way to the sanctuary. There's programs here and a register book.
I'd rather. That's what I thought.
I was bragging right now. Jonathan, I don't know if you remember Kevin. I did appreciate you guys there, but that was nice. I know. And that added to the Abby Glory thing. My two daughters. He's my favorite. It's done. Yes. And I got 2 bonus brackets. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, sign this. Make your way to the
Well, see, we had 2 redheads. Take it here. Where did Mom go? Where did Mom go?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. They must be overing it. I mean, they must be taping it.
There's one there. These are our sit-ups.
Cemetery, yeah, you take it off. Here is
I know.
I'm gonna push down here and I'm gonna put you outside.
And these are the other people. And I think the younger generation's probably gonna get it because I'm a little old. Yeah.
And we were up there, and we're going up on Wednesday.
Looking slim, Ed.
Oh, you're looking great. Oh, so nice to see you.
The other person.
What's that?
You should see the other person.
What other person? Oh. You getting a fight with Mike Tyson on Netflix?
Are you friends with her? Okay. Yours and oh, she's been so sick.
Wait, no, last time I saw you, you didn't have to be here. It, yeah, Yeah, Peter has been and gone and come back. I cleaned it up because it wasn't growing at the same rate on the side. I understand. Hey, Jim. How's Brian?
Can you get out of the wheelchair?
Yeah.
I can make space here.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Well, I'm moving forward at some point. Why don't you just wait here? You don't have to get out of the chair.
I could get my own seat.
Careful. Just wanted to point out I'm leaving the camera here. Thank you.
Where would you like to sit?
Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask everyone to put your cell phones to silent mode at this time? Thank you, everybody who's come to the service. And the people that have come to us that are online with us. Brian, if you could be seated. Service is going to be conducted by Rabbi Edward Friedman.
Brian, if you'll rise just for a moment. Just as we thank God for all the good in our lives, we also acknowledge God in times of sorrow and recognize Him as the judge of truth. And so if you'll take the bottom of the ribbon and tear it just a bit, and we'll say the blessing together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, dayan ha'emet. Praise to you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, the judge of truth. Adonai, ma'adam v'teda'ehu ben enosh v'techashehu. Adam lahevel dama yama kesel over. Baboker yatsis v'chalaf לערב ימלל ויבש, למנות ימינו כן הודה, ונביא לבב חוכמה. שמורתם ראה ישר, כי אחרית לאיש shalom. God, what are we? Do you have regard for us? What are we that you're mindful of us? We're like a breath. Our days is a passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning shoots up, renewed, in the evening fades and withers. You cause us to revert to dust, saying, return, O mortal creatures. Would that we were wise, that we understood whither we're going. When we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted, behold the upright, they shall have peace, God. Redeem the soul of your servants, and none who trust in you shall be desolate. Our God and God of our ancestors, at this hour of grief we turn in prayer unto you, you merciful and all-wise guardian of our destinies. You are our loving Father. In the fullness of your kindness, you lead us in the paths of life. The light of your goodness ever illumines our steps. Even when we're in the valley of the shadow of death, we feel your presence. We see the hand of the Almighty in all that comes over us, and reverently we submit to your decrees. You, who have made man and woman, know what's best for them. As we're grateful unto you for the bounties of life, even so do we thank you for the evening calm of death, which comes after the storm of struggles and hardships and brings peace to the weary and the heavy laden. Even when the cup of sorrow is passed to our lips, we know you have not forsaken us. In this painful hour, parting with our cherished Esther Pollock, we praise you, O God, for the years which you granted unto her, in which she brought joy and comfort into many a heart. May strength and consolation come unto her sorrowing dear ones and to her friends. Teach them your ways, so they may triumph over their grief. We praise you, O Lord, whose love and kindness are endless. Psalm 23. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo efsar, ben od deshet yar biseni, Amei menuchot yenaleini, nafshi yishavev, nafshi yishavev, yancheni lemaglet sedek, leman shemo. Gam ki elech megesh al mavet lo irara yatai mahadi shiftecha umishantecha Shiftecha umishantecha Hema yenachamuni Taharoch lefanai shulchan Taharoch lefanai shulchan Taharoch lefanai shulchan Neged sorerai Ishanta Vashemen Roshi Ishanta Vashemen Roshi Ishanta Vashemen Roshi Kosirivaya Achov achesed yidefuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti beveit Adonai v'shavti beveit Adonai liorech yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod, thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Today is Yom HaShoah, the designated date in Israel for the annual memorial for the victims of the Holocaust. Earlier today, at 10 a.m. Israel time, sirens went off for 2 minutes as the entire country came to a halt in silent tribute to the 6 million Jews who died in the Shoah, and recognition of those who either escaped or managed somehow to survive that terrible period in world history. Esther Pollock's parents, Ulrich and Nancy Athelroth, were among those survivors. Nancy is still with us at 96 years of age and has frequently, over the years, shared her story with students and others. Following the war, Nancy and Ulrich met and were married. And in 1947, their daughter Esther was born in Germany. And they realized that there was nothing left for them in Europe anymore. And they considered moving to Israel. However, they thought at that time it might be too difficult to bring a young child into the midst of an unsettled situation in a brand new state. So instead, they looked to the United States. And because of skills he had obtained during the war, Ulrich considered going to the West Coast to work in aircraft manufacturing. But due to security concerns, that didn't work out. Instead, seeing opportunities in manufacturing here in Aurora at the time, and an active Jewish community, they made their home here in Aurora in January of 1950. I'm told that Ulrich and Nancy did not say anything about the Holocaust to their young child. And it was not until she became a teenager that she learned about what had happened to the Jews of Europe, and that her parents were survivors of that catastrophe. In Aurora, they lived at first downtown, not far from where the temple was located at the time. Esther and her younger brother, Howard, who was born in 1951, grew up here. She graduated from East High, went on to the University of Illinois. She loved to perform, to dance, and sing. She had a good voice, and music was always important to her throughout life. She was also on the debate team. She helped to build the homecoming float in her driveway at home. Years after, she was very much involved in arranging the class of '65 reunions. It was the late 60s when she started college, but she soon after a time decided that college was not for her. She headed out to California, and Brian described her as a part of the hippie culture of the time. I'm not sure how much you know of her during that period, how much you want to know about her during that period. However, for a few years, that was her life. She spent some time in New York as well, and of course, being in New York, she went to the Woodstock Festival. Eventually, after this phase in her life, she decided to return home and settle down by 1970 or 71. She had known Jack Pollock, the banker, a mortgage broker, and so they got together after she returned to town, and in June of 1973, they were married. For 45 years, they were together until Jack's death in October of 2018. For some years, Esther worked in the early years of her marriage at what was then Continental Bank, and she became head of their financial security department. She continued there until the birth of her son, Brian, in 1977, when she retired for a time to raise him. She was very active here at Temple B'nai Israel. You'll hear more about that shortly, but I can tell you she sang in the choir, taught music to the children, was involved in our Sunday school. She also got involved in the sisterhood, involved, she became president. And she served as on the temple board, various committees, and became temple president on her own, and again in tandem with Judy Jacobson more recently. And Brian's asked Elisa Davis and Judy Jacobson to share their memories of Esther's role in the synagogue life, and we'll hear from them shortly. Esther did not confine her activities to the temple, though. She served as president of a local Hadassah chapter. She was active in the PTA at school. She served on the Aurora Public Art Commission, was a lay member of Interfaith Aurora, among other activities. In that interfaith role, she encouraged bridges between the local churches and the temple. And when we held our annual memorial for Yom HaShoah, she reached out to local clergy whom she knew, and she got them to participate in the programs with the congregation. It's very important to her that we commemorate the Shoah year after year. For a number of years, she worked for the Fox Valley Labor News in multiple roles. She was a business manager, but also wrote a regular column. She became increasingly involved in politics, wrote about it, and she attended the 1996 Democratic National Convention and reported on that as well. As Brian got older, she got him involved in politics also, encouraged his sports activities as well as his love of music. As the Fox Valley News made changes in this direction, she left that position, and around 2002, went back into banking. She became a branch manager for Bank of America, and worked there for about 10 years. As she began having difficulties with her vision, macular degeneration, she left the position of manager, but stayed on as a teller. Was urged to remain at the bank, even as her vision deteriorated, because she was so trusted and respected by many of their customers. However, by 2012, she felt that she had to retire. She faced a variety of medical challenges in the succeeding years. Beside her vision problems over a period of several years, she broke an arm and a hip, and another arm, another hip. It became increasingly difficult for her to get around. She had to withdraw from many of her activities. She was hospitalized on a number of occasions for various ailments, and at times it looked like she was not going to make it, and she bounced back again and again. I, unfortunately, never got to know her in her active days. Though I saw her in person several times over the last 7 or 8 years, often we connected by telephone instead. There were times when she was very quiet, didn't want to talk, didn't want to visit. Other times, I'd find her in a jovial, even a joking mood, and I think I caught a glimpse of the earlier mischievous Esther. When Jack died in 2018, I believe that was the last time I saw her here at the temple. Subsequently, she required nursing care and moved into Alden, Waterford. Her son Brian's been devoted both to her and to his grandmother. He divided his time helping her and also her mother Nancy, who recently went into hospice care at home. When Esther wouldn't eat at the nursing facility, Brian brought her peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and potato chips. That's what the doctor had ordered, right? And also watermelon, which kept her going. Of course, when her mother was not eating well, Brian put Esther on the phone to encourage her mother to eat, even though she herself was reluctant to do so. In spite of all her ups and downs, Brian said he was very surprised when he got the news of his mother's passing early on May 2nd, for she had seemed to be doing better shortly before he got this news. She seemed to be making some progress. We're saddened by her loss. And the temple has missed her active role these last dozen years or so. We pray that she's now at peace. We offer our prayers for consolation to Brian, to her family members and friends. Accept, O Lord, we pray, the soul of Chaya Esther, bat Pasha Moshe, v'Chaya Anacha, tachat kuseh kavod, beneath the throne of thy glory. Tinishmatat tzvara b'tzeror ha'chayim, her soul be bound up in the bonds of life, and may her memory be a source of blessing. Amen. So we're going to hear first from Alicia Davis and Judy Jacobson, and after that, Brian has a few words to share as well.
Hi, I'm Elisa Davis, as the rabbi said. I've known Esther since I moved to Aurora in 1977. She was very active in our temple, as the rabbi noted, but she was an active member of our temple. She was president twice of our synagogue from 2002 to 2005, and then again co-president with Judy Jacobson in 2014 to 2016. Her many roles was in our sisterhood. She was president of Hadassah, which is a women's organization supporting the Israel hospital. She helped organize many donor luncheons for the hospital in Israel. Being active in our temple sisterhood, she was also worked on many fundraisers, like our chicken soup sale, making soup and delivering soup all over Aurora, and also our corned beef sale. One side note about that is that we had so many orders at our sale that we ran out of corned beef. So they had to run to the Jewel and make the sandwiches in the back of Judy Jacobson's car. Since it wasn't kosher, we had to do that without breaking any kosher laws. She also was in our choir. She, when talking to my daughter, she reminded me of how Esther was always so tan. That's because in the summer, she would go to Westwind and be on the adult side, which I wasn't allowed to go because I had young children. But her and a lot of her friends were on the adult side, and I would kind of sneak in when I knew it was safe and just say hello. But she also was in our choir, as the rabbi noted, because she did have a beautiful voice. And I just will miss Esther greatly. She was a very good friend. Her intake of our synagogue and the Aurora community, it was beyond compare. So Esther, rest in peace, and you will be greatly missed. Thank you. Oh, she also helped with the rummage sale. That's about it. I kind of
What's the date of the next one?
we're not gonna have one probably now. Again, too much work. Sorry.
Thanks, Mom.
Those are really good rummage sales.
Well, don't think about it. I used to be in charge, but as you see, I'm kind of not in the greatest shape. Right?
You're great.
There you go.
I kind of screwed up.
Good job.
Kind of screwed up.
No.
Phoenix is right. You need it.
So Esther and I met right here in this building some 50 years ago.
I kind of screwed up.
Oh, you did.
In the beginning, she was working at that job in Chicago, and I was staying home with some little kids. I saw her on the occasional Sunday morning meetings, but I gravitated toward her because she was fun. Everybody liked Esther. So, but when Brian was born, we could spend more time together because she could stop working. We really met at the right time. Had we met in high school, we would not have been friends. Esther was outgoing and vivacious, involved with everything, as you heard. Little Judy, shy. Do I have to raise my hand? My kids marveled. Esther knew every singing group, the words to every song. My kids would say to me, so who was it who sang this? You're asking me? Ask Esther. And Esther knew and all the words. I think our friendship cemented at a Hadassah regional conference, which Edith, Marilyn's mother, and her good friend Lily encouraged us to go because they were trying to build young leadership, and back then we were young. We went to a Hadassah conference where we could leave the kids at home. Brian was a baby. I don't know who took care of you, but he stayed home, Phil got my kids, and we got to play with other adults. And they wanted to inspire us, and we were, and we became friends. Our hobbies together, because it was always Esther and Judy, Judy and Esther, were anything Jewish. The temple, the sisterhood, Hadassah. Our families got together for holidays. It was always the Pollocks, the Applerods, the Jacobsons. My extended family knew Esther, Brian, and Nancy. Elise and Kevin looked to Esther as their second mom. Somehow, like Elisa said, we were always in the temple kitchen. We knew it like the back of our hand. And when she talked about that corned beef lunch and my car started by driving to Chicago to pick up the 250 pounds of corned beef and pickles that we needed to make this lunch for all the people of Aurora. And we had people weighing out quarter-pound packages of corned beef, but they were throwing away the fat because, oh, this is too fatty. Well, that was part of the 250 pounds that would make 1,000 sandwiches. That's why we had to go to the store and we said, okay, these are going off to non-Jewish people. We're not making any kosher sandwiches on my car. But we did 2 of those sales, but then Esther and Judy decided to get jobs and go to work, and nobody else picked up that gauntlet. It was sad because it was really fun, but it was a lot of work. And then there was the board of the temple. She got on first, moving from vice president to president, and then I took my turn, and after it was my turn, we actually got some people to step up. I don't know about in churches, but nobody wants to be president here. So we're having that same difficulty now. So we had the year of nobody, and which I think we're having now. And so Esther and I became co-presidents. And that was a first, but it worked out until she had to step away. When Esther felt there was a wrong that needed to be corrected, she stood up. She didn't mess around. She didn't put her head between, let's say, oh, what can I do? She was there. She stood up and let everybody know how she felt. It was important to her. I'm very proud Esther was my friend. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you all for coming.
I'm proud to accept the nomination, I'm sorry,
Got my vote.
But hearing you talk about how, you know, it's always the same people doing everything and then no one wants to do it. You heard that before? Thanks for taking the time to come this morning. Whether you're here because you knew my mom, because you know me, or because you were afraid that people would talk about you if you weren't here, I appreciate it. For those of you that are watching on the stream and were unable to come, it's noted, we're watching you. Last year, during one of the times my mom was in the hospital, and I was explaining my mom's long medical history to one of the doctors, I said something like, cats have 9 lives, but my mom's had 20. Some of you probably heard me say that before. When you get old like me, you start to repeat things. But cats have 9 lives, Esther had 20. Although at last count it was probably somewhere closer to 50 or 100. I made that comment to the doctor because she'd had so many serious health problems over the years. Anna Glacius from her nephrology team would tell me, you know, Brian, your mom's really fragile right now. I'm not sure this time. Or, I don't know, we'll see. And yet, each time it seems like her body was giving up on her from another infection or pneumonia or whatever it was, she would surprise us. She would bounce back. And after a while, Anna would say, I hope I'm wrong. Or, she surprised me so many times, I just don't know anymore. And time after time, Mom surprised us. Last spring, during a long hospitalization that started with a nosebleed and ended up being in the hospital for a month, she was dehydrated, she didn't eat, it didn't look good. But of course, she always did her thing. One of the doctors of the hospital on the discharge planning team, who claimed to be an advocate, told me repeatedly, she's never gonna get better, just send her to hospice and just let her die peacefully. We'll skip past the fact that this so-called compassionate advocate was saying such a thing, but it's just an example of every time it seemed like that was it, Mom bounced back. They had her on pureed food because I was told she's too weak to eat solid food. In order to get them to advance her diet, I smuggled in a McDonald's a kosher hamburger. She devoured it, and I reported it while she was eating. She built up her strength, she was released from the hospital, and she had a really good summer. I have so many stories like that. She should have died from this should have happened, this should have happened. I mean, she went through so much. But those are just opportunities for her to show how strong she was. Or maybe stubborn. Okay, both. But you can look at those genes in her family and my family, and specifically my grandma, who is, Rabbi mentioned, defines the word survivor herself. When my grandma came home from the hospital and started hospice, we were told that she probably wouldn't make it for more than 2 weeks. Well, it's been about 3 months, and she's actually getting stronger. My mom was the same way. She could go without eating or taking her meds for 2 months and gain all the weight back. She could survive anything. So while I didn't expect my mom to live forever, I certainly figured that those 2 women would outlive me. So losing her the way it happened was a shock, to say the least. But a cat has 9 lives, and my mom's had 20, applies to more than just her medical history. My mom has lived many different lives in her own life. In order to understand where she was, we need to know her background. Rabbi talked a little bit about her being a Holocaust survivor. Took some of my material, thanks. At least we'll get out of here a little faster. They met after the war in a small town in Germany where they found each other after the atrocities they experienced during the war and in concentration camps. They married a year later, and my mom was born the next year. They came to the United States and to Aurora when my mom was a toddler. My grandparents didn't speak English, but my mom started school and was the one who helped teach them English. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. I know some of you have experienced the same thing. Our parents were immigrants, and you're a first-generation American. It is the story of Aurora. Our families came here searching for a better life for their children. My mom, just a little girl at the time, was the one who helped them acclimate to this strange new world. My grandfather found a job at Barber Green back when Aurora was a blue-collar manufacturing town with many factories. He became involved with the Machinists' Union and was later president of the union. So politics and labor were in her blood. We'll get to that a little bit later. Early on, some of my grandma's cousins came to stay with the family in Aurora. Also sound familiar? One of my grandma's cousins, Al, who adored my mom, used to tell the story about that precocious little girl. One night, my mom was probably 5 or 6 years old, and she wanted popcorn. She was not going to take no for an answer. Al said, "It's after 9 o'clock, all the stores are closed. You're not getting any popcorn." He didn't believe her. So she said, "I'll take you." "Okay, fine, you find somewhere that has popcorn at this time, let's go." So my mom drags them to the movies, because they had popcorn in the movie theater. That was my mom. She was smart and resourceful, and she knew what she wanted, as Judy said. When she wanted something, she was going to do it.
Yes.
Now, some of you are actually old enough, like me, to remember when Aurora had a movie theater. Shocking. So she lived that first life as the immigrant child who helped her family adapt to their new home. She enjoyed school, she loved to sing, act, and dance. She was a tomcat and graduated from East Aurora. Well, she wasn't perfect. After graduation, she went to U of I, but she just wasn't feeling it. This was the mid-60s after all. She wanted to do something different. It was time for a new life. She moved to California. She started a new life in Newport Beach. Yeah, she was a hippie. When I told people that in recent years, that she was a hippie, they didn't believe me. Right, Elmer? She a hippie? She lived in California for a few years and met one of her really good friends, Arlene. I didn't get enough of the California stories from my mom, but maybe there's a reason I didn't get every detail about hippie.
I think so.
Maybe that explains a lot now. In the late 60s, she headed to California and New York. New York had a great music scene, and my cousin Al lived out on Long Island, which was a short train ride from New York City. I'd heard some stories, and I was talking to my cousin the other day, and there was a record producer that lived next door to them. So this George Morton, I think was his name, and he had provided her with some great access into the city to go to concerts, and I think she was in a recording studio during some stuff, so that love of music was always there. And she was at obviously one of the biggest events of the year at Woodstock. I still can't imagine my mom out camping in a muddy farm field, but, you know, I've only been alive to witness a few of Esther's many lives. Living the fast life in California and New York started to grow stale, and she moved back to Aurora in the early 70s. As she joked, she wanted something more slow and boring, so she married my dad. She went into banking and moved her way up the chain into a management position at Continental Bank. She was the head of financial security for Continental. Tracking fraud and counterfeit money doesn't sound boring, so maybe that was the counter and the excitement for marrying my dad. Then a few years later, she gave it all up when she gave birth to a bratty little boy.
Yeah.
In Esther's next life, she was the devoted mom. She quit her job to take care of me. I said that was the good old days, and that happened. Her parents worked multiple jobs to provide for her, but that also meant that they weren't always home to be with her. She didn't want the same thing to happen to me. It was difficult with my dad in the mortgage business and losing his job every time there was a downturn in the market, but she made that sacrifice, and they both did, to make sure that she would be home for me. I always knew that if I needed support or help, my mom would be there. And she was active in the PTA and volunteered at school when I was young. She taught me to swim. I think she just threw me in the pool when I was like 2 years old. She encouraged me to join the swim team when I was 5, gave me the love of water and the beach and just swimming and everything. She encouraged me to do whatever I enjoyed, but challenged me to do things I didn't like, so I had those experiences. I always knew that she supported me and would be there when I needed her. She was the best role model. She gave me enough freedom to make my own decisions and push the envelope, but trusted me to make the right decision. My dad was so overprotective that I probably wouldn't be able to do anything if not for her. Right, Mark? Am I still allowed to cross the street? I don't know if my dad would know, but my mom allowed that. He was afraid that I'd hurt myself doing anything, but she convinced him to let me live. I'd probably still be on training wheels if he were alive. She hadn't had a way. When I was a little bit older, she went back to work. And she was the business manager for the Fox Valley Labor News. When I was in high school, I worked there part-time and got my feet wet and writing for the newspaper. She opened doors for me and created many great experiences. I covered the DNCs, the Rabbi Side in 1996, the last time I was in Chicago. When I was in college and in law school, I had the opportunity to cover sports in the late 90s. Watching Michael Jordan and the Bulls' last championship team live, going to the locker room for a post-game press conference was an experience that no other 20-year-old had. My mom loved the Bulls, so I think she was living vicariously through me at that time. Being in the Cubs locker room when they clinched a playoff berth and getting drenched by champagne before I was legally old enough to drink was incredible. Having Bulls players offer me a beer, no one's really gonna know. But those experiences were there, and she wanted to make sure I had that, so I'd have those long memories, like she did. Except I remember mine, and she was a hippie, so I don't know what she remembers. Then, after the newspaper was sold, it was time for her to start her next life. She went back into banking. It was something she knew, but it would be a different challenge after being away from it for 25 years. But she loved to talk, and was great with people, so it was easy for her, like so many things. Customers loved her, and she was a great problem solver. Unfortunately, her body started to give out in the last few years as she was working. When her vision started to go, it became more of a challenge to work. Then in her last life, she went through all these health problems. For those of you that have known my mom for a long time, you knew that smart, loving, funny, assertive go-getter. She could be the life of the party. When I was younger, my friends would tell me that they'd rather hang out with her than me. Probably for good reason. Just recently, Alex was trying to grab her and take her out of Aldi to go grab a beer with her. For those of you who have come into my life in the last few years, I'm so sad that you didn't get to know her years ago. So much of who I am is coming from my mom, my love of music. She never had any training, but she had a great voice. As Judy said, she knew every song from everybody. Even when she was having a bad day, just pop on the Beatles and she would calm down. Right, Mona? Play that for her and she'd be happy. She had a great voice and she loved to sing. She loved the children's choir and sang in the temple choir here. When I had to decide between swimming and music, she made sure to guide me towards music. She gave me that love of community service. Like I said earlier, she was involved in PTA in the school. She was always there when I was younger. She was active here in the temple, as you heard. She was on the city's public art commission. She was a board member and volunteer with other community service organizations. The rabbi talked about how she built those relationships with other churches to make sure that people knew that, come here, see what people are like. You share those experiences so they don't see that you're strange or different, and we're all pretty similar. But she taught me the importance of just being involved and making sure you're always supporting people who need help. We have to make sure that we do that. She loved politics. Although my mom never ran for office, she was a natural politician. Growing up in a house with a union president and later working with organized labor certainly exposes you to politics. Being the president of a congregation involves a different kind of politics. She knew how to talk to people and solve problems. She should have been the politician in the family. My cousins joked that she should have been the first female president, but she wasn't born in the United States. At that time, you couldn't be born in Kenya and buy a birth certificate from Hawaii. Oh, I'm sorry. I knew I shouldn't have let Trump do my speech. It's been more challenging in the last few years to be involved as I wanted to be, but there was an important reason. If it weren't for my mom, I wouldn't be who I am or where I am, so taking care of her was a no-brainer. In recent years, a lot of the stories you've heard about her have been about her health problems, or the names she called me, or the things she did. You saw the scars and all that stuff. Dementia is an awful disease. It robbed my mom of her golden years, and it robbed me of more years of advice, support, laughs, and great times with my mom. I've described the last few years like riding a roller coaster in the dark, with so many ups and downs, you just couldn't see in front of you to know what's coming next. But even with all the difficult moments and challenges, there are still plenty of good times, even in the last few years. When she would bounce back after one illness or another, you'd feel that optimism that she was going to get another chance, she was going to get another life and take a step forward. Even after she came back from the hospital the last time, she seemed stronger physically. She was doing things differently, and I really wanted to get her back into therapy. I was really hoping we'd be able to get her home. But you'd feel that optimism that maybe something would be different this time. She always kept fighting and she didn't quit. Her body gave out on her, and the dementia affected her mind. But that fighting spirit was always there. I think that's even why when she was hitting or scratching, it was because her mind was confused into thinking she was being attacked and she was just fighting and trying to protect herself. And even in the low points, there were bright spots. She could scream and do whatever when we were trying to get her changed into bed, but a minute later she'd reach her hand out. So I'd sit with her and hold her hand. And she just wouldn't. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna hit me? Of course, I wouldn't do that. She didn't know because it was, that other part of her mind that she didn't control. About 2 weeks ago, I had been at my grandma's house and I came over. I apologized, I was a little bit late, and it's like, it's okay. I told her how my grandma had been home for, 2 months now since starting hospice. We didn't think she'd make it that long. And I told her I felt the same way about her. She went through that time where she didn't eat and it didn't look good. And she interrupted me and she said, yeah, I remember, you told me about that. And I said, yeah, but you're still here. And she said, yes, thanks to you. That part of her was always there. No matter how much the dementia tried to take over. That's why it's always worth all the physical and emotional hurt to keep fighting for her. So, take care of those you love. I don't want to be too negative. You never know what happens in the future. It might be a worn-out cliche, but don't take the future for granted and live each day as if it's your last. My mom didn't expect to lose her vision and start falling and go through all that stuff. And that's how, she certainly didn't expect that that's how her retirement years would be. But she lived the rest of her life to the fullest, and she never quit fighting. She was a remarkable woman and left an incredible legacy on me and so many of you. So, thank you all for coming, and I guess it does stay on if you don't have
Please rise for the closing prayer. El Malachimim, Shoftim Bamromim, Amasei B'Nocham, Nechona, Achad Kanfei Shechina, B'Mahalot Kedoshim U'Tahorim, Zoraki Amasirim. Et nishmat chaya Esther bat Asher Moshe v'chayanacha shehalecha le'olama b'gan Eden tehei menuchata Ana bal harachamim asdireha b'seitek nafecha Leolamim, V'tzeror ha'chaim et nishmata, Adonai u'nachlata, V'tanuach v'shalom mishkava, V'nomar, Amen. O God, full of compassion, Thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest unto the soul of Esther Riva Pollock, who has departed from this world. Lord of mercy, bring her into thy presence. And let her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Be thou her possession, and may her repose in peace. Amen.
Amen. Please be seated.
The interment will take place at Lincoln Memorial Cemetery in Aurora. For those of you that are driving to the cemetery, please obtain a funeral sticker or flag for your car. Drive with your high beam headlights on. Drive with your flashers on. Drive defensively. If the hearse has gone through and the light changes, you're welcome to go through the red light, but don't assume the cars on either side realize that there's a funeral procession, so please drive defensively. If we see that the procession gets broken up, we will slow down until the light changes. After the interment, There will be a meal of condolence at Loft 28 West New York Street in Aurora. It'll be approximately from 2 to 6. That information's in the program. Also, there will be Shiva here at the temple on May the 9th from 6 to 8:30 with a service at 8 o'clock. The following have been asked to act as pallbearers, but we're going to ask you just to help us at the cemetery only. Jim Laurie, Alex Arroyo, Chad Feldado, Don Ishmael, Georgie Poole, Simon Rodriguez, Emmanuel Yakis, and Eric Palmer. I would like to ask you all to, at this time, make your way out of the sanctuary. Brian's going to want to have a few minutes alone with his mom. Thank you.